Hi, everybody. This is episode number 67, or some other number, of our open book tours. In this particular rotation, in which we're choosing books that in which the artists have taken a strong position, and the work that they are creating presents the issues that they are concerned with. In this rotation, there is no speaker more appropriate than today's guest, Diane Jacobs. Diane is a bookmaker with her imprint Scanlon Press. She lives in Portland, Oregon. She has a degree in printmaking as well as bookmaking, and she's an extremely versatile and passionate and wonderful book artist. So I'm happy to present Diane Jacobs.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia, so much for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here. It's really an honor. So thanks for having me. I love this room being dedicated to book arts. It's really special. So I thought I'd start from the beginning, and I've chosen some books that I think kind of talk about the title of the show, which is Taking Issue. Thank you. Taking Issue. So in graduate school, I was getting my MFA in printmaking. My first edition book is called Knowledgeable, and it kind of lives in a test desktop. It's not a test, it's a desktop that has a timer, because I think of testing as really about being timed and needing to come up with the right answer. It's probably I think probably all the books, have some personal history in there, but definitely testing was not a strong point of mine growing up. And I always felt like these standardized tests I got caught up in the answer they wanted and not about what I knew. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of got the names of different tests on the cover here. And I love the printed page, and I was introduced to letterpress in graduate school. Mary Laird was my professor, who was incredible, and I'll just kind of walk us through it. So this was kind of my first experience in just kind of the happenstance of seeing that little head through there. I really liked, but I have to say I didn't exactly know that was going to happen. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I definitely used humor to kind of talk about some other issues besides just testing. Let me pop out my brain. Oh, thank you for laughing. There we go. There, my first pop out. Yeah. Since then, kind of. So it was dedicated to my nephew Jacob, who was born that year that I was creating this book. So instructions are very important with test taking. Using the timer, how to answer the answer sheet is just very important that you fill it in correctly. And let's see.
Jacob taking tests now?
He's actually graduated college now, yeah. Yeah, but he did have to. Luckily, my sons don't mind test taking as much as I do. No cheating, okay. That is very important. Bathroom break. Get ready, get set, go. And so you have to set the timer for, it's very interesting. One of my first one-of-a-kind books was all about like my report card and, anyways, we won't get there today. But so what is that interesting object? Who knows? There's the female condom. So there's definitely a feminist feel to this book, and also challenging us with our kind of Eurocentric way of test taking. And Braille down at the bottom. That was amazing. This woman did punch the Braille down at the bottom. These are all different sentences. And to be honest, which is terrible, here I'm being recorded, I need to find what each one of these sentences says. I have it somewhere, but they're all different. Some were kind of pieced together. This was a polymer plate, my first polymer plate back in, so I think this was 94, I think I made this book. And then some were handwritten by friends that, wrote those languages. And then just kind of this interesting matching of, I hope that this is a book you could pick up and kind of continue to kind of, oh, look at that. Or, just because there's different ideas, the whole, what do I want? Well, this one was to show you that they go together, best foods in Hellman's, depending on the coast you're in. That's kind of the lightest one, but then they get heavier, this idea of alien with immigrant and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And then also, like, what's the, this idea of there's one right answer, is this a teacup, a mug, or a glass? And depending on in your house what you might have, right? Economically as well as your experience growing up. So, and then you've got to stop before. And then reading was always the big one for me. Like reading comprehension. So that's why it's marked in red, because it was. And then this is the eye exam, and I have kind of, the memory of the eye exam and the hearing when you're in elementary school, little issues around that. And then I have some, and this came from an experience. I had to take a test in Italian, and it was a faxed piece of paper that I was supposed to read from, and it was blurred like that. It's like, please, could you read out loud that from? And I failed that exam. It was, no fair, right? It's not fair. I took it again and passed, but in a different situation. So these are some poems that my cousin Deborah Miller wrote. And we've got the math section. This was a lot of fun to make this book, to put the images, which came first, the chicken or the egg? The whole bell curve of your intelligence.
Oh my goodness, I'm glad I'm not in school anymore.
I know. And then, asking questions that, have some meat behind them, and talking about economics, how's our wealth distributed in this country, and then what is normal? Do any of those couples look very normal? So talking about, and then the word problems also kind of have a bit of a kick to them as we're progressing kind of through the book.
Would you read them?
Sure, yeah. So if there were 4 million American women physically abused by their husbands or boyfriends last year, and the figure is speculated to increase this year, how many women will be abused in 1995? There are 24 hours, or 1,440 minutes, or 86,400 seconds in a day. In this country, a woman is physically abused every 9 seconds. How many women are abused in one day? This is back in 94. I think it might be different now. 42% of murdered women are killed by their intimate male partners. What are we going to do about it?
Good question.
And which works best to shut her up?
Ooh.
Wow, I haven't read that in a long time. That was good. Woo! Well, and then here we go. Do we ever talk about the subject what's happening in this, painting, the rape of the Sabine women? We talk about the brushstroke and the colors, and it's like, what is happening here? Rape sure is accepted. And then a spelling quiz, kind of the words I chose. And then Harriet Storm wrote this little piece that I was able to include. And then, we have many senses, and we're so visually dominant. So, And let's draw a picture of ourselves. Let's end it that way. And then I really, even at a kind of an early, I like the colophon a lot. My colophons get very long. But my very last question. So, of course, this was my first book. It's all handset type. And I made some typos, and I was able to try to get around that. Where did I put it? Oh, right here. Last question. Can you find the 4 typographical errors on the colophon? Because that just, ripped me apart, right? Oh, no. So anyway, so that's knowledgeable.
How many copies did you make?
I made 26 copies, and I did make, I put the slipcase away, but I made the slipcases, and I think there were just 5 of the original, or maybe not, maybe there were 5 desktops. I've shown it where it's been wonderful. My father was a psychologist, and he also does woodworking, and he made this round table. I just have that memory of going back, visiting my elementary school, and the tables are so low, and you sit down at the little table and you feel like a giant. Well, the table is low, but the seats are lower, so you kind of get back to when you were a little kid, and then 3 people can be viewing the test book at the same time, and the timers, could be going off at different times. So that was nice. So for my thesis project at the end of my MFA, I had that installation. So it's so nice to be able to hold. Oh, am I supposed to pass them around?
We'll be very careful.
Yeah, oh, of course. Yeah, I just remembered that that's something. So this book, Alphabet Tricks, I guess I did it after. This was from 2000, and I received a artist book grant to work at Women's Studio Workshop, and so I produced part of the book at the Women's Studio Workshop in Rosendale, which is a wonderful, yeah, it's a wonderful place, and it was awesome to. Since I have my own Vandercook press, I decided for me to take the type and print it there didn't make sense. But what I did do there was work on the images with Anne Combach, who she helped me print these little images. So this book is taking, it's like there's a page missing. I'm not sure.
There's something on the back.
Oh, I think there are 2 cards. 2 cards in one sleeve. Sorry. Let me just change that. You can pull the cards all the way out, but they can be kind of tricky to get back in. So there we go. So early on, I'm kind of fascinated with this idea of transparency, and so these things will kind of come up again and again in some of my work. I definitely was into the red, black, and gray color, and you'll see me break out of that a little bit as we move along. But I was very interested in talking about using derogatory and slang words in my work and kind of reclaiming them. I had an experience where I went to see the Guerrilla Girls actually in San Francisco and felt very empowered, coming home on the BART, and then this gentleman asked me for a quarter, and I gave it to him, and he said, "Thanks, honey." And I just said, "Don't call me honey." And then he just called me every name in the book. So it was kind of eye-opening. But
Mental illness can be unpredictable.
yes. So with these words, ankle is so I picked a word. I mean, it could be so many, right? How do you pick? I don't know how I decided on each one, but I wanted to kind of bridge the definition that you'd find in the dictionary with this. I had this amazing, the Random House was doing these books on derogatory and slang words that they did A through G, big books, and then H through, I think, O, and they have not come out with the final part of this incredible dictionary. Anyways, so I have a little sentence at the top that is putting it in its, using it in that kind of context. So she strikes me as an ankle who doesn't scream easily, is the top of that one. And so an ankle is a noun, a young woman, especially an attractive one, with long legs that taper to a thin joint between the cannon bone and the pastern, as in a horse. The slender region between a spiked heel and a voluptuous calf. So my friend Harriet Storm, who is a writer, we did a few together, and then she just kind of gave me the confidence to feel like, okay, because I don't consider myself really a writer per se at all, to be able to kind of come up with my own, and she was kind of my editor. So anyways, this is a double. What's wonderful about Accordion Books is they're double-sided. And so when I printed this book, so when you pull out the card, I printed it in one sheet on my press, but I didn't give myself enough room in between the lines because, you've got spacing and yeah. So I had to print it, I think, well, maybe I'm trying to think, 1, 2, not that many times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 times through the press on the sheet of paper. And it's Stonehenge paper. I wanted a very stiff paper, but it's very hard to print Stonehenge. So I needed to dampen the paper and come up with this whole way of keeping it and flattening it. But anyways, it was, and this is the biggest edition I've ever done. It was 120. And with Women's Studio Workshop, they wanted you to do around 100. I mean, they also do smaller editions. And it just so happened I kind of printed extra, so I was able to kind of have the edition be bigger. But the images are all hand-drawn, and then Anne helped develop the screens, and then we printed them together, which was wonderful to have her expertise, but I kind of wanted that looking through and seeing and then they just can kind of pull out that you can kind of see them. And I did do a one-of-a-kind ceramic little sculpture to go with each of these images, and then they kind of exist on a little piece of wood shelving. So that was really fun, because I do kind of like to dabble in many different mediums. But this piece in the front was kind of the inspiration for the project. It's actually, I think, military surplus, and if you look to the side, you can see that the words are quite tiny, and I just like that, the way things magnify and kind of change your perspective. So that's kind of was inspiring.
Where did you find the terms that were between E and Z to go in here?
Yes, so good question. I have several different dictionaries. So I also have other dictionaries, that are thick and A through Z. So, but they weren't as thorough. I mean, what I loved about that book is it gave you lots of examples, and it gave you little sentences that they were used in, and yeah, it was. Oh well, thank you.
And where is the Women's Studio Workshop?
It's in Rosendale, New York. It's just like a little over an hour.
Yeah.
Out.
That's the river.
Up Highway 22 or just?
Gosh,
Okay.
It's,
I took a bus
the
there.
Freeway and turn left.
I think so. Yeah. I think okay.
They have paper making. They have ceramics.
That's where I learned Mac programs.
Oh.
Is that the one? Because I used to live up there.
It's the Women's Studio or?
Women's Studio Workshop. WSW is kind of, yeah.
They have a website
And they do multiple residencies.
at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, they have different opportunities.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, not a,
It's out in the country. It's beautiful.
it is beautiful, and there's a lake you can go swimming. Anyways, it's really nice. So this book, I know I'm still in the red and black, but it's a little bit. This book is called Reparation, and it was kind of I think it would probably be fair to say a 2-year project. that I started and finished in 2007. Oh, I didn't look in here. I'm going to change the order a little bit. And sorry. This book was inspired after reading Angela Davis's book Abolition Democracy, and I decided I would pick a word. Well, I have the words see, feel, open, and act, and I would. Here we go. Sorry. Let's see. Actually. Oops. Dun, dun, dun. And that's where I want to put this one. Okay.
When you go to do residency, how much stuff do you bring with you?
Oh gosh, depends. If I drive there, a lot. If I fly there, not as much. Yeah, it's nice to have lots of opportunity. I really, with those residencies, it's really about working on that project, where some residencies you do get to just explore a medium, and that's, yeah, kind of a different thing. But I was on a mission. I was gonna get that part done. So this book, these pages, Helen Hebert made the paper. I don't know if we can see that. There's a watermark. I think if you hold it up, you can kind of see it. I can see it. Let's see. Oh, what about? Does that
Is
help?
it in that space there?
There's an hourglass. Sorry, that's probably not. I don't know how to do it right. In behind the bars. So I was really, and it says it's dedicated to our children. This piece, I just felt like it's showing how, well, here, let's go through it a little bit, and then I'll say what I want to say. But so I wanted to have a book that could be displayed. So every page, part of the problem sometimes with artist books is you open it to one page and you can't see the whole thing. This book hangs on the wall also, and you can read it like a book, which I like, because then you get to see the back of the page, which shows you that there's hair sewn between the negative space on the C, which a lot of times people don't see. It's kind of fun. I've been showing this to people lately, and once they turn it, they go, oh, and then they want to see, oh, I didn't even see the hair that's kind of in between the word C. So, and then, for each word, I have a visual page and a text page. And so for my visual page, this is kind of an homage or a nod to Christo and his wife, who I should know her name more than his. Yes, thank you, Jean-Claude, who would wrap things, and that idea of concealing it makes you see it more. So this is abaca paper when it was wet that Helen made and gave me sheets of, and then I was able to kind of wrap the magnifying glass. And felt, you'll see that a little bit. I love this wool felt as a material. And then this is my text page for the word see. And with the 13th Amendment, slavery was abolished, but except if you've been, let's just read this. So slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So we've really replaced slavery with the prison industrial complex. And Angela Davis in black it's a quote out of her book, and the red are statistics about incarceration. That is, it's just we have the most incarcerated people in the world, in our country, and it's really creating. It's devastating to especially people of color, as well as anyone who's been put through that system. So with this book, this is the first time I took an artist book and actually did an installation with all this research, and they're so the walls of the gallery kind of became the pages. So I had this was stenciled up on the wall. I think it took 13 days to stencil this, on this 30-foot wall. And I think, Anne, didn't you come and help do some stenciling? Yeah. And then there was a big feel wall. This is a collagraph of hair, and so it's kind of nice. I don't know if you can see the back too. You can kind of see the back. So the wall had hair, actual hair in the wall. Like I used plaster and attached it to the wall, and then painted the wall, so it was kind of like part of the wall. Well, and this one really cuts to kind of this Bill of Rights for children of incarcerated parents actually has been made into law, I believe. I mean, this used to be on websites that it was advocacy groups for incarcerated people and their families, but I think that someone's told me that this has been made into actual law. So that's a good step in the right direction. Saying that I have the right to be kept safe and informed at the time of my parents' arrest, and just all these rights that children should have when their parents are being taken from them. So then I did a little soft ground etching. This is actually of my son's hand. It took me many, many times to get this down, but I'm pretty happy with it. And then the open. I love to watch people look at this, because then they'll open it, which is what I obviously kind of want, but it's just seeing the next page below. But it's kind of nice to just have that dimension.
How did you hang the pages?
I hung them with magnets. So a nail behind,
Good idea.
and then a magnet holding
Yeah.
the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've come up with, I've shown it I've shown it several times. I used to be kind of in a grid, and now I show it, and it feels more like a book, because it's not symmetrical. It's not just a grid. I have a certain, so it seems like there's the pages that kind of go together, and then the pages that go together. I have like a little drawing of it. But anyways, I like the way it's kind of hanging more, so it feels a little bit more like a book. And this is a poem that Kathleen Flowers, a very dear friend of mine, wrote for this project. And it really helped, because there was so much research and so much information, and that's part of it. Is like, well, what do you include, and how do you have all that other information? And it's a wonderful poem to read, and I like that you kind of have to work at it to read it. This is a polymer. I did not hand set this type, and it's four different. I think it's 4 different polymer plates. Yeah, I'm gradually getting a little lighter in the tone of the gray.
Can I ask a
Yes.
probably basic question?
Yes.
And I think I know the answer, but probably not. Polymer plates, so you're not using, I etched a million years ago.
Yes.
Was it zinc plates or a copper, or I can't remember.
Sure. Yeah.
But what's
Yeah.
is it
Polymer. So
plastic
you're exposing the plate, so it's a plastic.
Okay.
So I make a file on the computer,
Uh-huh.
and then I can send it. I like to use Boxcar. I don't have a unit to expose my own plates, so send them the file, and then they make it. So it's a plastic, so it washes away where you don't want.
Like photo silk screen.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like what?
Photo silk screen. Did you
Oh,
ever do
photos,
that back
right.
in the day?
Yeah, so they want a negative,
Okay.
and you kind of give it to them right reading, and they know that you're
They
going to
know.
be printing it, so that
Right.
needs to be the other way, and they kind of have it where they can really talk you through it. But it's a wonderful. I do like to hand set. Like you'll see my colophon, and that's all hand set. I just like that hands-on. So this is the image for open, and this is really Sandy Tilcock. Did a broadside using this mahogany wood that and I just loved it. And sometimes you see things and you put it in the back and go, oh, I want to do something like that. So this is a mahogany frame, and I just loved the grain of the wood and just kind of wanted an empty frame for my image for that. And then this is my act. This is maybe the first time you're seeing human hair. I work a lot with human hair. In 1993, I shaved my head and saved my hair, and one of my early one-of-a-kind books was called Bald, and it was just kind of a documentation of that process of shaving my head. But I'm really fascinated by hair. This has got no glue or anything in it. It's a hemo braid, so I had a wheel that I could kind of braid it so it would be flat, and then I boiled it to have it, because I had a book on the Victorian hair jewelry, and that's what they would do. So I guess something to do with the proteins, it would kind of make it stay. So it's just kind of sewn on there. But this, here's our privilege, right? White privilege, right there. Snip.
Did you cut the holes by hand?
I did. I cut the holes by hand, and I really wanted.
People who make books are so obsessed with I just can't compete.
So the idea is that this one kind of hangs away from the wall a little bit, and then you can get this nice shadow from the scissor handle.
That's very cool.
And it's been challenging to get it lit kind of right when I've shown it, but I'll show you the last page, the colophon. I want something similar to that. So here's Martin Luther King quote. Oh, sorry, Cynthia. You get to see it too.
Probably come over here, Caitlin.
And then this was kind of, the next page I would say. So here's the world upside down. And when I did this project in the gallery, I made a large map of the world using human hair on felt. And then I hang a globe. So I've been fascinated. I've done some work with the plexiglass balls that you can buy at Tap Plastic, the way they reflect and turn things upside down and kind of reflect different things. So it hangs in front of the map, and then so my map is upside down, and then it turns it right side up in the globe, and that's kind of the amount of change that we need for to have equity, and so that's our. And then this was going to be my action. I was planning to circulate these bills. So I've turned George into Georgina.
Oh, gosh.
And it says, emancipating the dollar bill around it. And I remember in San Francisco just hearing that here we have on our money, most of the men that are on our money were slave owners. And we're like dealing with this money day in and day out. And I just, I think that that's really something. And at the very end, I want to tell you about another project I'm working on to do with money. But here's the colophon for this book. Kind of got big. But these bars, if they can hang out from the wall, create, you can have the shadow kind of created. And yeah, this is hand set. And I put the order of the pages in here because, you know, there's kind of a reason. It's a book. There's a reason to the pages. I like them being loose, but, you know, there's an order, which you could look at it in a different order too, but kind of in the back of the colophon. There are 14. And people always, you know, sometimes people say, well, how did you come up with that number? It's just like, well, that's how many I got. There's not a lot of... that goes in, actually, I put it on the top of the etching, just in case, because, you know, ink just doesn't, you know, it's not that black, but it's just a little protector there. So I guess this is not going to get passed around, is it? No. No, okay. And I did not make this box. I did not make the slipcase either. My first artist book, I made the slipcases, and then I realized, you know, that's not my forte. It's a lot of work, and it's very precise. And you might think I'm precise, but not exactly. I have 25 minutes. Okay, that's doing okay. Is that true? Okay, maybe I'm going to take a sip of water, and that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, so then we're going to move into some color because we're all tired of black and white, right? Or red and black. This piece is called Nourish All Our Relations, and the All Our Relations comes from an indigenous perspective of how we're all related and we're all connected. And I learned that from a dear friend of mine, Karen Kitchen. And so I had this laser cut the box, and this is just a little drawing that, you know, I did many little drawings to kind of come up with one that I liked to get laser cut. This is a bamboo box that Mark Burden made, and you know, if I could show you the first one that we tried, was big and bulky, and it took a lot to get down to this kind of refined box for this project. But I wanted the walls to fold down. I wanted a place. I mean, I work in a lot of different materials, and I like objects, and I like the meaning kind of behind different objects. And I wanted to have a wishbone. This wishbone is porcelain, so I cast. It's a turkey wishbone, so it's nice and big, and made these wishbones, which, you know, that's kind of, yeah. They're I don't know why. And then I have this paper pulp spoon too that I cast in paper pulp, and yeah, those two little aspects. But so I started bringing some objects, and my next book that I'm going to show you, I really get into objects. But this book is really about celebrating the natural world and just working very differently, because I started doing reduction cuts. So the magnolia is a reduction cut in linoleum. The little bee is polymer. This is hand set. But I was just loving this Gampy paper and kind of seeing through to the next page. And I really just printed nonstop. You know, I made a dummy that kind of was about what it was going to be, and then I just kind of went for it. And, you know, you can see the little bee butt out the back, which I kind of like when those little... There was definitely an element of chance, like not everything was planned. And I did have to reprint some pages that I wasn't happy with, But this was an experience I had in Rome, actually, where I saw the most incredible starling murmuration, and I just will never forget that sky. I had starlings in my backyard just yesterday. They just come in, you know. They're such kind of aggressive birds, but they sure make beautiful patterns in the sky.
Can you talk about that?
Oh,
The color.
sure. So this is a rainbow roll, which is kind of new to me too. So On my Vandercook press, on the roll, I can put orange on one side and blue on the other, let it mix for a little bit until I get kind of a nice, even gradation, and then not keep it running. If I kept it running, it would keep mixing. So I have to turn off my press, and then I print, and then I might ink up again, and then I can print. So I did a series of prints that are, at the same time I was working on this artist book that was, I have a lot of, just single prints that are a little different than the book, because these are all square sheets of paper, but they're kind of either narrow or longer. But because they're reduction, right? Once you keep cutting away and you print it, then you kind of lose that layer. So this is pressure printing. So in order to get that white behind the blue, I had to have I'm calling it a plate, but it's just the thickness of cardstock. So this moon shape was cut out, and then I'd get a little bit of printing of the blue. In the base of my press, I'd have a type high MDF board with plexiglass on top that gets all the ink. And then beneath my paper is this piece of cardstock with the cut out moon, if you can imagine. And then the paper's running over this inked up slab that's in my press, so that I could get this yellow. Otherwise, if it was going on top of the blue, it wouldn't work. And I didn't want yellow beneath the blue. So, and this is a reduction of the Starry Night. And what's kind of, I don't know if this will show up on the camera or not, but, kind of they become the air bubbles kind of for the fish. And you can see kind of the moon coming up on the other side of the paper as well. Is that visible? A little bit? Not as, it's very visible to me. That's not fair. Sorry. And then, of course, the salmon, which is so important to ecology and just learning about how it feeds back in. Salmon are very important. And then the fern are also pressure printed. These were sword fern from my garden. So this was a rainbow roll, so I printed it. So all these sheets were printed. Well, let me open it up first. So here we go. So here's Mount Hood, and then ferns on that side. But then we've got this looking up into the forest. And so the order that I printed this, I think I printed the fern first. So those are pressure printed, meaning I pressed them and then glued them onto this cardstock, and that was under my paper. And then this was rainbow rolled, so I had the light green to the dark green. And then I printed my Mount Hood. That was reduction, so I cut away the white, printed the light blue, and then printed the light purple, kind of went back and forth, and then ended with the green. And then, so that if you can imagine, the sky was very light and crisp. And then I wanted to have this inner print. And how dark do I get to, but so it was exciting to kind of have this coming through on the other side. But it took me a bit to be brave enough to I have to get darker, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And so, but this paper, this is a Gampi 2-layer, and it's shiny on one side and then kind of more opaque textured on the other side. So I have two different Gampi papers that are kind of working. Which way am I doing this? Oh, I'll just keep going. All right, and there's Ruby, my chicken. See, again here, this was all white until I printed on the inside, but it kind of made the print for me. And this is kind of taken after my sister has a farm, so I was inspired by, these are things she grows in her farm. And up until this point, I felt like, I either have to go yellow or blue. I can't do both. So if I start with yellow, then it would mix with the blue to turn green. But if I started with blue, it would mix to be green also. but I wanted blue and yellow. What do I do? So for on this page, I figured out rainbow roll. So I rainbow rolled the background. This is the truffula tree from Dr. Seuss, taken through the seasons. So I've got winter, spring, summer, and fall. So I've got little bats and lightning and little chanterelle mushrooms down at the bottom, and little frogs in springtime. And then there's a labyrinth, and that was really fun to see the labyrinth. We visited yesterday here. I think it's the same path. And then there's, my inside is kind of a la truffula, I think people like to say truffula tree, for, the Lorax. Sorry if I'm, and then this egg was so plain, but then I've got all this great printing that's coming through, which made that much nicer, I think.
Are those stored photo
Polymer?
plates, polymer
No,
plates?
this is all hand cut. So
Lino press, I mean linoleum
linoleum or wood block. So she was a wood block. That was linoleum,
Okay.
and I think this is a wood block too. I think it's got the, or maybe it's linoleum. I think it's linoleum because you can't. I don't see the grain of the paper. So yeah, it was either linoleum or wood block to make those. This Doomsday Clock is polymer that I snagged off of the computer. Okay, we can't be all jolly with the state of affairs of the environment.
Just in the last year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's closer. This was 2012. So this is Pangea, when all the continents were together. I wanted to be able to show everything together. Everything's connected. It's all interwoven. We can't. And then we've got the Ouroboros eating our tail. And west is east, and east is west, and south is north, and north is south. Mm-hmm. And then this is a swastika from Keys, because the swastika was a beautiful symbol before the Nazis had it. So kind of opening up our heart. Music is so international. It's just transcendent, right? We can all. This is a piece that Edward Cremo wrote, Turnings. And that's more of the music notations. So I made a polymer of his notations. And then there's a native drum. And then this is the colophon for this book. So just kind of seeing the spider web through the picture, and the colophon, and then the spider's web. And I have a little additional spider I'm going to show you that is part of, I'm going to take this signature home and sew in this piece on here, because we are the spider. We must come up with some creative solutions.
You machine sew them in?
I do, yeah. I finally am brave enough. Anne, who's right here, she sewed my other, the other stitching with the sewing machine has been other people, but now I can do it. This is a ginkgo seed, a little reduction print. So I'll put that back together after. So then I'm going to 12 minutes.
And what's the title of it?
It's called Nourish All Our Relations. All right, so let me show you my latest big project called Object Noun Object Verb. And it was made, Sandra Krupa and Lauren Dudley invited, I think, 30 artists to make a piece for their show, Just One Look, up at University of Washington. It's University of Washington, right? Yeah. And I had Mark Burden again made this incredible box. I made a cardboard version and really put him to the challenge of making a round box, and had to have glass doors. But we were asked to select literature that they had a list of different authors, and it was wonderful. I had this idea I wanted to do with objects, and I talked to Lauren, and she was just like, "Oh, I'm going to send you Ruby Blondell's book," and it was Helen of Troy, Beauty, Myth, Devastation. So all the text on this side is from Ruby's book, and then all the text on this side is from Adrienne Mayer's book on Amazons. So I was just so excited to read about Amazons. And so this book is this side is talking about the objectification of women, the ancient, in ancient Greece, where misogyny really feels like it comes from, this idea. So these shelves come out, and I guess we could pass some of these around because they have, so the text is on the back side, and the front side are objects. And it was this wonderful way these ideas that were back in my head about how I wanted to I've always wanted to use orange peels, but they talk about the cheeks and the eyes being so, I'm going to pass these just since I'm running out of time, and I can't read them all. But, and then this one, in graduate school, I was looking at Rorschach ink blots, which have always been fascinating to me. So this is kind of the psychological kind of, and then we've got some chicken egg breasts that are attached well, so you don't need to worry. And then we've got, there's lots of, with tail is kind of a derogatory word for woman, but out of her book, she talks about, this idea, an adolescent virginal girl ripe for marriage embodies a feminine wildness that must be tamed by sex and marriage. Otherwise, she'll be an unbroken filly running free. We don't want that. So that's a human hair tail on a horse's rear.
You didn't mention the words in the eyes on this one.
I didn't.
Yeah. Don't miss the words in the eyes.
Thank you. Yes, don't miss those. I don't want to say them out loud. Just kidding. So here's yes, the horse is ceramic, and then, yeah, and then this is a little nest, and this one is very, very, they say a single night of sex with a man will win over any woman, even apparently a virtuous wife who has been enslaved by an enemy who then rapes her. God, this is, and so this one's got the gold, and I, just want to say, I'm going to pass this one too, but I like the reflection, and as you're pulling out different, they kind of get obscured, that obscure. And then we've got the Amazon side in comparison. So we've got the title page and the lengthy colophon on the back.
For good colophons.
And then Kurt, what's Kurt's last name? Kurt, he's on my colophon. He made this beautiful enclosure. I printed everything, and then he designed this to be for my pop-up map to show you where the Amazons rode. So there were these components that I think really made for an egalitarian society. They were nomadic, they rode horses, And what else? Nomadic.
They wore trousers.
And they wore trousers, exactly. And yeah, they were archers. And they had, oh, I don't need to close that maybe.
Kurt Van Horn.
Thank you, thank you. Camera, did we hear that? Kurt Van Horn. And then this is some more handmade paper. I made these objects that I molded over to kind of show the excavating part, and that's how we know that Amazons existed, because these burial mounds were excavated, and 37% were females, and they have the war scars to prove that they fought in battle, and they were given this, respectful burial. So. And then I've got this military dog tag necklace with a little bow kind of holding it back. And I like having a little sound in the piece. And reflection, I like getting to see the viewer being reflected in the piece. And then this is some Amazon drawings that I did with ink that I made polymer plates of. And then this, Cynthia, is when I printed the faces, I printed up sheets of paper with all the derogatory and slang words and collaged that paper onto the dress. It was kind of fun to use that. But yes, they wore trousers. What a wonderful invention.
Especially if you're riding horse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's really.
yeah, less access with trousers. And they also had tattoos.
Oh.
So, I don't know, am I...
This is just amazing.
See, too.
Yeah, this goes this way. This goes this way. It's an attitude.
And they wore,
Really?
and they rode horses. So, want me to- thank you. Get that one to you. And then the last book, I know I'm running out of time, is taking the Amazon side and focusing on that, and doing a letterpress book, which has been a while since I've bound a book. So kind of coming back to a binding.
Just love the feel.
Because I went on a residency at Playa, which is in Summer Lake, Oregon, beautiful, and was able to, so for this project I did 3 Amazon drawings, and then I took this project and made an installation that was really amazing experience in Portland at White and Kennedy. They have this huge lobby. I mean, huge pillars that I turned into Greek columns. And I had, one of the columns had all these chicken egg breasts, like 223 pairs of chicken egg breasts, all shades of, natural egg color, eggshell color. And made these Greek columns. It was really an amazing experience. But I made more Amazon drawings. And so it was nice to have 10 Amazon drawings in this book. I had those big drawings projected, and they were animated because it's an advertising firm. So a fellow, Adam Sirkin, animated my drawings. And so they were projected, huge on the gallery wall, and they were shooting an arrow and moving a little bit. It was really quite something. So this book, I kind of start with the Burial Mound. So this is a pulp painting. I made 4 different discs. So there are 4 different, I don't know if you have, this is 4 different of these carved discs. Because then I could dry 4 at a time, and it's kind of fun to do them a little different. And so this is painted with pulp, and it's a tribute to our mothers, sisters, and daughters. And I dyed this paper with onion skins, so they're all kind of a little bit different. this was kind of a little different title page for me. In the installation, I had all the names of the Amazons, and they're sandblasted on the outside of this box, and then in the gallery they were up on the wall, and then printed here. This is the color of the paper, so the polymer plate that was made puts the orange. I printed it orange, and then the wood type. And then this page is onion skin dyed and has the pop-up map. And the type is all the same. The text is all the same. I had to reset it for this book, but these are the different Amazon pictures. And this one I printed it and folded it because I wanted to kind of seem like battle, like if you are fighting, you might be, in pieces from. I think she's the one that this arrow goes flying across the wall, and the battle axe, I think. And this is kind of, the myth that the Amazons cut off one of their breasts is not true. That would be crazy.
That would cause an awful lot of bleeding.
It sure would, which doesn't really get in the way. And then this one's colophon is in the back. Did I do it in time? Thank you.